Calder Holt saw the van too late to pretend it was innocent. The sliding door cracked open as the woman in heels stepped into the dim levels of level B2. He tightened his grip on Ren's leopard print lunchbox and moved without thinking. Some habits never unlearn themselves, they wait for an excuse. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. He set the lunchbox down behind the concrete pillar and nudged his daughter with 2 fingers, the way he had taught her, quiet, calm, practiced. Hide and quiet, bird. Ren's eyes darted, then understood. She folded herself behind the pillar, knees to chest, braid tucked, the way he'd made it a game when she was 5. She was 8 now, better at it than he liked. Calder angled his body as if he were a man deciding between the elevator and the stairs. The woman, sharp navy suit, hair twisted into a decisive knot, jabbed the fob at her sedan. The van rolled forward with a purr that sounded new and wrong in a garage that echoed with old water and the grumble of vending machines. 3 men in plain clothes moved as if they'd rehearsed it, one toward the woman's door, one toward her shoulder, one carrying the absence of hesitation that tells you where a gun will go. "Ma'am," Calder called, like a lost maintenance guy, like a man who had opinions about fluorescent bulbs. "You dropped something." Her head turned a fraction. Their eyes met for less than a second. He saw the human things first: surprise, calculation, the lean away that some people do when the world tips, and underneath it, the fatigue of someone who has signed too many papers and eaten dinner at her desk. Then he saw the fear arrive. He did not shout again. Sound gives angles to predators. He stepped out of the shadow and used his left shoulder as a lever. The man with the fake messenger bag didn't expect the physics of a 200-pound father whose lungs had remembered the desert and the cold water and the slow miles that taught you what to ignore. Messenger bag folded on the concrete with a breath that left him like a coin falling through water. The second man grabbed at the woman's arm. Calder took his wrist and rotated it where hands learn obedience. The pop was quiet. The third man's jacket lifted high enough to show the belly of a pistol. Calder lifted the woman into the narrow space between concrete and sedan, turned, and threw the half-rolled lunchbox across the ground. It clattered near the gunman's feet, bright as a toy. The man's eye betrayed him, 1 second of startle, and Calder closed it with his knuckles. Soft targets close fast when you use the knuckles the way you teach them in basements and borrowed gyms. Someone shouted something that sounded like an order. The van door yawned fully open. A fourth man climbed out with a smile that made no promises. Calder had 3 data points and a choice: fight in a garage with his daughter 5 feet away or change the geometry. "Keys," he said to the woman without looking. "Please." The woman didn't ask questions, which told him she was used to decisions that skipped the committee. Her fob pressed once. The sedan chirped awake. "Get in." "Passenger." "Belt." He guided her without touching. The fourth man had the posture of someone who believed guns solved more problems than they created. Calder didn't want the sound of a shot anywhere near Ren's bones. He slammed the driver door, thumbed the start button, and let the sedan's electric motor give him the gift of silence. The van jerked forward to cut them off. Calder steered toward the far ramp, clipped a yellow bollard, and flattened the space to 4 inches wider than the car. The sedan scraped paint like it was shrugging off its old life. The van's driver hesitated 1 heartbeat too long. Calder took the ramp. It is not magic to move cars where other people don't expect them. It is repetition married to patience and the decision to ignore what your hands want to do. He let the rear end slide a breath, corrected, and shot the gap between a mower and a concrete column. Ren stayed hidden behind the pillar because Ren believed him. She did not break that belief even when the van fishtailed and the fourth man shouted something obscene at the ceiling. Calder hit the top of the ramp and caught right hard enough that the tires protested. A security camera blinked red and blinked again. He saw his own face in the convex mirror for an instant, beard too long, eyes that didn't sleep enough, a jacket gone threadbare at the cuff, and then they were out in afternoon light that felt like it had no permission to be ordinary. "Seat belt," he said again, calm. "Low in the seat." feet braced. The woman's breath was a metronome trying to find its tempo. There, who? Later. Head down. The van burst from the ramp below like a whale breaching in the wrong ocean. It took the turn wide. Calder took the next left and let two cars get between them. He didn't accelerate the way frightened people do, he fed the speed like a slow river. He counted camera poles and remembered the traffic light cycles from 100 afternoons waiting for Ren. He slid the sedan into the shadow of a delivery truck and let the van blow past them at the next intersection, horn talking loud like confidence. The woman lifted her head. Her pupils were too large. She was trying to convert panic into strategy. Name? Calder asked. Elara. Elara what? Quinn. He knew the name from billboards and news stories he had let scroll past. Quinn Systems. Payments infrastructure. The interviews where she answered questions in language that made complexity sound like a corridor with clean light. Okay, Ms. Quinn, he said, still watching the mirrors. I'm Calder. That was an organized grab. You've got a phone? She fumbled for her purse. Yes. Turn it off. Battery out if you can. It's sealed. Then off. And put it on the floor under your feet. She did as he asked. He watched her hands as much as her face. Capable hands shake slower than hands that have never been punched by the world. What do you want from me? She asked, and then she caught herself, recognizing the wrongness of the sentence even as it left her mouth. I mean, thank you. My God. You don't owe me anything, Calder said. You do owe someone an explanation for why your security team wasn't here. They were, she said, voice cracking into a small laugh that had no humor in it. They texted to say there was a glitch at the east exit and they'd meet me at the main elevator. I took the stairs instead. That text was from the head of security. Calder put space between them and the van and took 3 turns he didn't need. Then either your head of security is compromised, or their phone is. Either way, we're not calling that number. We have to call the police. I will, when we're 2 moves ahead. How many moves is safe? Calder watched the mirror, and the mirror watched him back. More than we have time for. He pulled into a self-serve car wash and coasted into the last bay. Water hissed into the concrete channel like a snake that knew it had work to do. He cut the engine. Can you sit still for 60 seconds? He asked. Elara nodded. She did not tell him that she sat in boardrooms for 6 hours at a time, that stillness had been her only defense for years. She simply nodded. Calder slipped out of the sedan, crossed to the bay's control panel, and fed it quarters from the pocket where he kept emergency quarters the way some people keep prayers. He yanked the long wand free, angled it under the wheel wells, and gave the car a skin of rinsed anonymity. The van wouldn't see them as a black sedan with a scrape anymore, the van would see them as a wet car like 1,000 wet cars leaving a car wash that afternoon. He washed the license plate longer than he needed to, then used the brush to erase the chalky residue on the bumper that would photograph too easily. When he slid back in, Elara looked at his hands. Noted the easy movements of a man who liked things clean when mess tried to win. Who are you? She asked, quietly this time. He didn't answer. Data belongs to those who earn it. Instead, he pulled a spiral notebook from the console and a pencil that had been sharpened down to small honesty. He tore a sheet, folded it once, then again. Put this in your left shoe, he said. She blinked. What is it? An address. If we get separated, go there. Don't go home. Don't call anyone from your contacts list. Walk into the bakery and order a loaf of sourdough with sesame. The woman behind the counter will fail to smile at you. She'll tell you they're cash only. Say you're short and you can pay later. Then repeat the last 3 sentences you just said. She'll take you downstairs. If she doesn't, leave. Don't argue with my instructions. You can fire me for being rude after you're alive. Elara slid the paper into her shoe. She didn't point out that she had never paid cash for bread in the last decade. She didn't point out that her shoes cost more than every appliance in the car wash. She pushed the paper down against skin that had not done this sort of work before and felt something like a circle close. Ren moved from shadow into light at the edge of the bay with the patience of a cat. She waited for Calder to look at her and did not speak until he gave her the nod he always gave when words were safe. "I counted 4, she said. Calder felt love and fear rise together like a tide that doesn't ask for permission. "Good. Head up." Alara's eyes flicked to the child and back. It was a picture that didn't belong in her life, an 8-year-old with a braid and a backpack that had a unicorn with a missing ear, standing in a car wash while someone tried to steal her CEO. "Ren," Calder said, "this is Ms. Quinn. She's having the worst kind of adult day." Ren considered that with more gravity than the sentence deserved. "Do you need a Band-Aid?" Alara made a sound like a laugh cut into thirds. "Possibly." Calder drove again. He did not take familiar streets. He avoided tunnels and kept the sun where it told him things his mirrors could not. He did not narrate his decisions because he was busy making them. 2 blocks later, he made the police call. He did not dial 911. He dialed a number that would hit the precinct desk sergeant directly, a number he had used twice in 4 years when Ren's mother had left them forever in a way that was not death but felt too much like it. "Precinct 2, a voice said, bored until it wasn't. "Larkin," Calder said. "Need a quiet code 5. A pause that said friendship is code rather than feeling. "Holt." "What's the sit rep?" Attempted snatch in the Madison main garage. 4 males. White van. Possible inside coordination with corporate security. Victim is high profile. "I have her alive. We're moving. I need a black and white to do a very obvious loop around Ms. Quinn's building and make a show of escorting her ghost car. And I need eyes on the van if you can get it without spooking them." "You have her?" Larkin's voice tilted. "As in, with you?" "As in, I am doing your job for you, yes." "Cute. Where's your unit?" "Not telling you that on an open line." "Do your loop. Call me back on the number ending in 103 when your cruiser clears the first block." "You're a pain in the Civic backside," Larkin muttered. "And if this goes sideways and my captain's nose smells it, I never heard from you." "Breath of fresh compliance as always," Calder said, and killed the call. Alara stared at him like a person watching a stranger build furniture from memory. "You have a precinct sergeant on speed dial." "Everyone has an old life," Calder said, and turned onto a street where the trees were trying to outgrow the power lines. "Your old life came with this." She gestured at the world outside the windshield, the calculus of angles and shortcuts and plans that refused to fail. It came with 24 young men who thought they were wolves and a handful of older men who had learned how to be dogs, loyal to a line, not to a person, and maybe that's better. "You're former military," Alara said, "the way you name a river when you've been crossing streams for hours and finally see the full body of water." "Former is the part one like about that sentence," Calder answered. "Mostly I'm a dad who wants to get his kid home to homework and spaghetti. And yet here we are. And yet here we are." Larkin called back and did not waste breath. "We've got the van on B1. Plates bent. No match. Unit 12 is doing your parade lap. Your ghost shows left at Pine in 3, 2. Calder watched the corner and saw 2 uniforms do a thing badly on purpose. The sort of obvious that draws flies away from the sugar you're hiding. "Good," Calder said. "Keep them fat and happy. Send me snapshots of any faces you get if you can do it through the back door." "Do I look like a tech fairy?" Larkin grumbled, and then added, "Quieter, Holt. Be careful." "That's the plan no one respects," Calder said, and ended the call. Alara had her hands in her lap like she thought movement would trigger a mine. "Where are we going?" "A place that doesn't exist unless you've already been there." "Which means it exists more than most places," she said, a reflexive argument that told him she thought in paradoxes for a living. He parked 2 blocks short of the place and walked the last yards with Ren's small hand tucked like a secret in his. Elara walked on his right where the world could see the expensive suit and misinterpret the trio as a family. The bakery's window was fogged the way good things fog windows in the late afternoon. The woman behind the counter had shoulders that looked like they'd carried bags of flour since she had arms. "Sourdough with sesame," Elara said, voice doing its best to be the voice of someone who buys bread. "Cash only," the woman said, as if cash were a religion and Elara had arrived in the wrong church. "I'm short. I can pay later. I'm short. I can pay later. I'm short. I can pay later," Elara said, careful with each echo, trusting for reasons that felt like the first time she had believed someone without a contract. The woman did not fail to smile. She weaponized the absence of a smile into an acceptance test. Then she lifted the corner of a rug that looked married to its spot and pressed her foot on a spot where would gave a little more than floor should. A door appeared where no door should be. The stairs smelled like cinnamon and a dampness that no inspection touched. The room below was wider than the bakery above the way some truths are wider than the lies they live under. Tables. A whiteboard. A cot. A fridge with 3 unlabeled jars that looked like pickles and weren't. "This is a community kitchen space," Calder said, because language mattered in rooms like this. "On paper. In practice, it's a place for people who need to not be where they were." Elara's knees lost their argument with her spine. She sat. The chair didn't apologize. Ren wandered toward the whiteboard and drew a bird that looked like a child's bird and also, somehow, liked the idea of flight if you had never seen a sky. Calder poured water from a glass bottle that had a rubber gasket and handed it to Elara without touching her. "Small sips. Big breaths through your nose. Focus on the cold." She did. He watched the tremors retreat into places where they would wait to surprise her later. He knew they would. Bodies do not finish anything on the same day you started it. "I have questions," she said, some minutes later, when the world had shrunk enough to fit inside her chest again. "You're allowed 3, he said, and because he feared softness more than harm, he let his mouth find a small smile. "Who are they?" "Professionals. The kind who rent violence for the afternoon and return it without a receipt. They're not the kind who build empires. They're the kind empires hire." "Who hired them?" "If I had to bet, someone who wants access to your systems without access to your lawyers. Or someone who thinks kidnapping passes for leverage in a world where leverage is usually a spreadsheet." She considered. "Or someone who knows that the fastest way to crash a payments network is to remove the one person who can restart it in a storm." "That too. My third question is the one you don't want to answer. Why are you this good at this?" He looked at Ren's bird and at Ren, who was biting her lip like she did when she was pretending not to sing. He looked at Elara, who had put her fear in a box with clean corners. He chose honesty that did not broadcast everything. "I was good at this when being good at this was my job," he said. "Then I was bad at something else. Then I had a child. Then the job left, and the child stayed, and I learned that you can build a life out of smaller pieces than anyone thinks are enough." "Is that how you talk at home?" Elara asked, and the question carried humor like a white flag. "Only when I'm making spaghetti," Calder said, and Ren laughed at that because the sauce was always either perfect or a catastrophe and you couldn't predict which by the day you had. The woman from upstairs brought down a plate with 3 slices of bread that were warm enough to ruin patience. She placed butter beside it like an apology for a world that puts people underground to be safe. "Thank you," Elara said, too softly. The woman nodded at Calder. 40 minutes, she said. "Then I need my table back." "We'll be gone," Calder replied. The bread tasted like the part of the day that isn't threatened by anything. Ren put too much butter on hers and then decided that moderation was for people who didn't own their minutes. Calder borrowed the whiteboard marker and wrote 3 names in the corner Elara could see: Merritt Shaw, Graham Rook, Felix Dane. "Elara, who do you trust less than you admit to yourself?" he asked. She looked at the names and didn't flinch. "Merritt is my CFO. He thinks risk has a moral component, and I think he thinks I'm reckless because I don't fear growth the way he fears loss. Graham runs security. He's ex-Secret Service and believes the world owes him because he took a bullet for a man I wouldn't trust with my sandwich. Felix is the board chair. He smiles like dentists consider ethics optional. Any money missing? If there were, I would know. That's not arrogance. That's what I read for pleasure. Any deals you said no to that made someone say you didn't understand the game? Alara's eyes slid to the right like a person watching themselves leave a room. Last month. A partnership proposal from Lodestar Capital. Private equity dressed as philanthropy. They wanted partial control over our authentication engine. Dressed it up as global access. I offered them a different line of business. They refused. They're used to getting what they want. Who in your company wanted you to say yes? She hesitated. Merritt thought it was inevitable. Felix thought it was destiny. Graham said he'd lock it down if I did say yes, which was code for I want to be on the winning side of the picture on the wall. Okay, Calder said. He circled Lodestar on the board and drew an arrow toward Graham Rook's name. The text from Graham about the east exit could have been engineered, but my gut says this is broader. If they send a 4-man team to take you in your own garage, they have a contingency for the noise we made. Which means we're on a clock. He turned to Wren. Homework? Wren, who had learned to carry the day in a backpack because that made a day seem manageable, unzipped it and produced a sheet with math problems that believed in apples and oranges as proxies for usury. 10 minutes, Calder said. Then we move. Alara watched the two of them, the way Normal and Disaster sat at the same table like cousins at a wake. I can pay you, she said, because she needed to say the thing that made her feel like she had some control. You can pay the baker, Calder said. And you can pay the city's taxes so they keep the lights on in the places where darkness breeds stupidity. Pay me if we survive. But not in money. What else is there? Something I can't afford that isn't a thing you can buy at a store, he said. We'll get to that if we get to that. The 40 minutes became 30 because the street above had a new sound, not sirens, not tires. A sound of waiting, which experienced ears learn to hear as soon as it arrives. Calder stood and moved to the foot of the stairs and looked up into the seam of light. He caught the sight line of someone in a car across the road, windows tinted to legal but not pleasant. They reacquired your scent, he said, voice calm but with the steel he reserved for Wren's bedtimes when the world felt tall. How? Alara asked, already on her feet. Phones. Cameras. The fact that you exist. It is very hard to disappear when your face is printed on things and your last name pays for buildings. What now? We go somewhere we can be 2 moves ahead and half a move invisible. Your place? Calder considered that for exactly 1 second. It was a no that liked the idea of yes and hated the risks that came with it. No. A place that owes me and owes no one else. They surfaced into a street that had changed clothes while they were gone. The sedan looked like a car that had lived hard and been forgiven. Calder put Wren in the back, gave her a look that met window discipline, and pulled them into traffic with the modesty of a man who likes his turns unremarked. They drove toward the river not because the river held answers, but because the river held angles. Bridges make people choose lanes. Lanes reveal intentions. 2 cars back, the van returned to the story. Its plate was now a different lie. Graham Rook would call that professional, Calder called it obvious on a day when obvious had guns. He slid into the right lane, then right again, toward a district that had fought a war against itself over murals 10 summers ago and had decided that paint could keep peace better than policy. The garage door he wanted was painted like a dragon sleeping. He tapped twice on the horn, waited a breath, tapped once. The door rolled up like old men get out of chairs. Inside, the smell of oil and old coffee and a song about loyalty that had no words. A man with arms like bridge cables wiped his hands on a rag that had known more sins than absolutions. Saw you on the camera, the man said. You bring me trouble or payment? Bram, Calder said, with the relief you feel when you see a lighthouse and remember that lighthouses are for ships that don't know what to do next. I brought both. Bram looked at Alara and then at Ren and rearranged his face from suspicion to welcome faster than his size suggested he could move. "Ma'am." "Bird." Ren smiled. Bram used to let her sit in the cab of a tow truck and pretend to drive while the engine slept. He had a way of making ugly places feel like they had rules. "Need a place under the radar for 6 hours, Calder said. "And a plate swap. And a thing that would get me yelled at if the DMV had feelings." Bram shrugged like the world had asked for harder favors. "Meanwhile I have pie. You hungry?" Ren was always hungry for pie, even if she was not hungry for food. Bram sliced, handed, did not fuss, and the room gained 2 degrees of ordinary just from pastry. Calder pulled the van's image up on an old monitor Bram used to watch night races that weren't legal and weren't quite illegal enough to be fun. He paused where the driver's face caught a corner of glare and traced the jawline with a finger like it might give up secrets. "This man," he said to Alara. "Look at him until you can't not see him." Alara did not do emotions for crowds, but she did focus for survival. He was the one with the smile. Yes. People who smile at work should make you nervous. Bram's plate printer coughed up 2 legal-ish rectangles that would hold while they needed them to. He and Calder swapped them the way old friends swap lies. Ren finished her pie and studied Alara with a frankness that would have been impolite if she weren't 8. "Are you famous?" she asked. "No," Alara said. "I'm just loud where loudness pays dividends." "I think you're brave," Ren said. Alara swallowed. "I think your daddy is." Ren nodded like she had just solved a riddle. "He is. But don't tell him. He gets weird if you say it out loud." Calder pretended not to hear and tried to pretend not to feel. Bram's phone buzzed. He looked. He went still. Calder. He turned the screen. A camera angle from outside showed Graham Rook's profile in a black SUV at the corner. Wrong side of town for an executive. Right side for a man who wanted to be seen by the person who had eyes on him. "He's not even hiding," Alara said, voice flat with something worse than anger. "He thinks you'll call him," Calder said. "He wants the narrative of rescue back. He wants to reframe the problem. You were momentarily unprotected, now you are safe because of him. Then he gets to say someone else screwed up and he fixed it. So we don't call him. We don't call him." Calder's phone buzzed with a text from a number he had not saved because saved numbers are predictable. "Larkin, unit has visual on your smiling friend. We can lean or we can look, asterisk asterisk." Calder texted back, "Look until leaning is the only thing left. Any chatter on Lodestar, asterisk asterisk." Larkin, whispers like old pipes. "Not in my house. In the tall ones, asterisk asterisk." He put the phone away. "We don't have 6 hours," he told Bram. "We have 90 minutes. Then I need to move Ms. Quinn to a different board." "Chess metaphors," Bram said. "You know I play checkers." "Exactly," Calder said. "Which is why you live." They left with plates that would fool the cursory glance and a route that would fool the precise one. Calder put Ren in the middle seat, Alara behind him, and drove with the kind of patience that makes impatience do something stupid. At a light, a bicyclist rolled past and glanced into the car with a look that was too professional for spandex. Calder shifted the rear view and saw on the polished silver of a restaurant sign the reflection that told him patience was about to get an argument from luck. "Hold tight," he said, and when the light turned green, he didn't move. He waited the half-second extra that makes the car behind you honk and pull around and reveal itself as a second van with a plate that no one had time to print properly. They wanted him boxed. He wanted to not be. He took an alley that had never asked to be a road. He kissed the mirror against a dumpster and made the dumpster apologize by moving. Ren giggled because the world breaking felt less scary when her father did it on purpose. The alley spat them into a street that belonged to produce sellers and a man who ironed shirts like ironers used to. Calder caught the coat of a pedestrian with his open hand and steered the man 3 inches away from disaster. He didn't have time to apologize and the man didn't have time to be angry. They lost the second van in the honest traffic of a market where everyone believed they knew where they were going. Calder pulled under a train overpass and let the car idle in the noise. "Okay," he said to Alara. "We need more than running. We need to turn this into something they have to answer." "You want bait," she said. "I want a camera. I want them to admit without knowing they're admitting that they're working for someone whose name our friend Larkin can say out loud to a judge. That's not a fast plan. That's a plan that keeps you alive long enough to have a fast plan later." Alara stared at the chalked numbers on the bridge beam like she could do math that added to survival. "Okay. How?" "We give them a target at a place we can shape. We make them believe you want to surrender. Meanwhile we shape their path, take their faces, and take away their appetite for future afternoons." "You sound like you've done this," Alara said. "I sound like a man who thinks the other people in the story aren't as smart as they believe," Calder said. "Which is dangerous. So let's pretend they are. And prepare for the one thing smart men always forget." "What's that?" "Someone who loves a child will do worse things than someone who loves money." They chose the place, a rehearsal space in an old brick school where bands went to become noise without bothering neighbors. It had 2 exits and 3 cameras in a back lot that looked abandoned and wasn't. Calder texted a number that would get to the kidnap team the way water gets to the sea, too many rivulets to count, but all downhill. "She's scared. She'll talk. We want a guarantee. Back lot of Wilson Arts at 7. 1 car. No cops, ***. They arrived at 6:30. Calder set Ren at the drum kit in the corner of a room with egg cartons for walls. "Practice your rhythm," he said. "Same pattern we did last week." Ren nodded like a drummer in a stadium of fear. Alara took off her heels and put on shoes that Bram's wife had kept in a box for a day she never expected. They were a half size too big and that made her feel like she could outrun something she hadn't met yet. Calder wired a GoPro into a broom handle and taped it to an emergency light. He ran a cable under a rug to the tote where Ren kept markers and a stuffed bear with one eye stitched back on in mismatched thread. He mounted a second camera in the crack between the door and the wall where old wood had shrunk from new paint. At 6:52, he heard the sound of a muffler borrowed from a catalog. At 6:54, he got the text, "We're 5. Alone, ***. At 6:55, Larkin texted, "I want to lean." At 6:56, Calder texted, "Look. If I say lean, you lean like a tired tree, ***. At 7 o'clock, Calder opened the door to the back lot. Alara stood beside him with her hands where the world could see them and believe in compliance. 3 men emerged from the shadows like they had been practicing the choreography. The smiling one was there. So was the cheap van with its new plate and its old scent of impatience. "Miss Quinn," the smiling man said, as if they had an appointment. "Your security team is worried sick." "You're not my security team," Alara said. Her voice did not tremble. It did something more dangerous, it invited them to underestimate her. The smiling man's eyes flicked to Calder and back. "You like playing hero, friend?" "I like not filling out incident reports," Calder said. "They make my wrist hurt." "Step aside and you won't have to write anything." "Maybe I'll write you a letter," Calder said. "We can be pen pals. I'll send you a pen with no ink." The laughing was thin. The man to the right shifted his weight like a man who had been told to shoot second and was looking for a reason to become first. Calder placed himself half a step into the doorway. The angle forced any burst to pass through him before it found Alara. He had done that for people with rank. It was easier when he didn't like them. This was harder because he did. "I want a guarantee," Alara said, and even as she said it, he heard the lies she was willing to tell herself if it bought them seconds. "You don't hurt him. You let him walk away. You give me." "The boss lady wants a contract," the smiling man said to the air. "Cute." Calder held his breath at the exact place where lungs teach patience. Someone in the van moved. The door hinge sounded like it needed oil and like it didn't care. A fourth figure stepped down, short, heavy, hoodie too clean. He felt the change in the room before he saw it. He felt it in the skin of his arms and in the small bones in his right ear that had been arguing with tinnitus for 14 years. The air had the emptiness of a place about to be filled with force. Bram's face appeared in the reflection of the emergency light cover where Calder had not expected to see anything but dust. He was in the far corner of the lot, moving like a wall that had learned to sneak. Calder spoke without moving his mouth. "Down," he whispered, but he wasn't speaking to Alara or Ren or Bram. He was speaking to chance itself, asking it to crouch. The shot came from the far fence line, not from the men in front of him. It took a chunk out of the brick where Alara's shoulder had been a second earlier. It was a clean shot from a bad man who had good glass. Not the smiling man. Not the heavy one. Someone they had not seen in the rehearsal. Calder spun Alara behind the door, pulled it half closed with his left hand, and with his right drew the small pistol he had not wanted to use tonight. He fired once at the source of the flash. Not to hit. To change minds. Bram moved. Bram moved like a falling thing that decided not to break. He hit the heavy one with the weight of a man who had lifted engines alone. The smiling man's grin left his face like a bird startled from a wire. Calder heard Ren's drum pattern shift to the beat he had taught her for emergencies, long short long long. It was fear translated into code, the bravest kind of music. He felt the third man at his side the way you feel weather. He didn't look. He let the man grab him and turned his wrist inside the grip, locked the elbow, and showed the joint its future if it didn't behave. The man made a sound like a dropped jar. Larkin's voice came through Calder's ear like a memory of permission. Lean? Calder chose. Lean. Sirens woke up from across the block with the joy of men who had been told they could finally move. The van lurched. The smiling man chose running over dying. Smart. The heavy one under Bram chose neither and went to sleep in a way his dentist would have to address. Calder dragged Alara backward, slammed the door, threw the bolt, and put a chair under the handle because movies sometimes teach true things by accident. Ren, he called. I'm okay. Ren's voice came from under the drum riser where she had learned to fold her fear into small spaces. Alara reached for Ren with the urgency of someone who had never wanted children and suddenly understood that wanting has nothing to do with protection. Ren pressed her face into Alara's shoulder and counted, out loud, to 7. 7 was the number they used to slow storms. Outside, the sirens did their work and the sudden quiet that follows violence tried to pretend it was peace. Calder checked the cameras. He had faces. He had the smile frozen in pixels. He had the heavy one and the jar-sound man and a frame of a muzzle flash from the fence line that would give them a height and a left-handedness and the habit of chewing gum even when gum makes no sense. He sent the package to Larkin with the neatness of a man who rarely asks for help and holds his breath when he does. Larkin's reply was swifter than bureaucracy ever is. Got them. But you've got a bigger problem. Your house, ***. Calder didn't feel fear. He felt a clarity that arrived in a white burst across his brain, like snow on an old television. His house. The picture of Ren's drawing on the fridge. The door with the scuff from her scooter. The neighbor's cat that thought it owned the stairwell. The lock he had replaced twice because he trusted locks more than he trusted luck. What does that mean? Alara asked, reading his face like a screen she knew the password to. He showed her the text. I have to go, he said, and it wasn't a sentence, it was a verdict. Then we go, Alara answered. You're not leaving me here. He looked at Ren. Her eyes said the thing her mouth couldn't. She was trying to be brave and using up tomorrow's supplies to do it. Bram pushed the back door open with a shoulder, face gray under the oil that never washed away all the way. Cops have your smile, boy. But the SUV that was babysitting the block peeled off the minute the sirens sang. They were never here to finish this. They were here to keep you busy. A new text from Larkin, camera on your block just went dark. Power glitch. Could be nothing. It isn't, ***. Calder calculated without moving. Distance to home, 12 minutes by the fast road, 18 by the quiet one, 25 by the cautious one. Men with a plan would cut the power as a test, then hit the door while the building told itself it was fine. Bram, he said, voice steady because the first person who loses it always loses on behalf of everyone else. Take Alara and Ren to the garage on Pier 3. Key is under the second step. Don't go in through the front. Walk around the back by the tar barrels. Wait for me. If I'm not there in an hour, drive Ren to Larkin's wife. Alara, give Bram your number 2 phone, don't lie, and keep your primary off. If you get separated, the bakery again. Bread and sesame and the truth. I'm not letting you go alone, Alara said. You hired me by accident, Calder said. This part isn't billable. She took his arm, fingers hard enough to make the nerves talk. If they want me, too, then they'll. If they want you, they will wait. If they want leverage, they will go fast. And that means me first. He leaned down to Ren, who had learned to hold tears like a cup and not spill them. Bird, he said. Listen with your whole head. You are not responsible for me. You are responsible for being with Bram and Ms. Quinn. That mission has priority. That mission does not change even if you feel a thing you don't like feeling. What's the mission? To stay with Bram and Ms. Quinn, she said, small but iron. And secondary? To breathe and count to 7 if my brain gets loud. What number do you call if you can't make your mouth do anything smart? Auntie K. Good. Why? Because she doesn't panic, and she likes waffles. Exactly. I love you, he said, soft and clean. I know, she said, because she did. Bram took her hand. Alara took the other. Calder watched them until the back lot turned a corner and took them out of sight. Only then did he allow his hand to shake once, hard, like an animal that shakes off water and keeps moving. He drove alone. He did not take the fast road. He took the one with the most exits and the fewest cameras. He spoke aloud once in the empty car, don't be a story I tell myself about who I am. Be the person she needs. 2 blocks from his building, the street lights blinked in a way that meant more than bulbs. He cut the headlights and coasted into a space that had a view of the entrance and 3 windows he could see by in other buildings. He breathed once, long enough to feel the edges of his lungs. The front door of his building was propped with a pizza box. It had the wrong handwriting on it. Calder eased out of the car and moved in the space between streetlight and doorway shadow like a rumor. Up 2 stairs. Down 1. Pause. Someone in Unit 2B was cooking garlic and hope. Someone in 3A had their television volume at a level that meant someone else wasn't home. His door was closed. The scuff from Ren's scooter looked harmless, which is what harm always tries to look like first. He crouched, head turned, ear to wood. Inside, air moving. A fan? No. A man. The kind of slow rough draw that says impatience and nicotine. He put the key in because people expect you to do the normal thing. Then he didn't turn it. He knocked once with the sweet spot knuckle, high on the frame where wood speaks clear. The breathing paused. The floorboard to the left complained. Someone leaned heavy against a wall, not used to that weight. Calder stepped back. Wrong apartment, he said into the door as if embarrassed, and the smallness of his voice made the man on the other side learn the wrong lesson. The lock turned. The chain slid. The man on the other side had a face that had learned arrogance in cheap mirrors. He saw surprise instead of purpose because he wanted to. Calder let him see it because it gave him 1 step in and 1 step off balance. Then Calder taught the man what happens when you stand in a father's house without permission. It was not pretty. It was fast. Calder's left forearm met the man's throat just long enough to dim the world to a dark gray for him. He stepped in, closed the door with his heel, and put the man to the ground the way you set a heavy box down when you want it to behave. He did not kill him. He tied him with a charging cord that had lost its ability to carry power but could still carry weight. He dragged him into the bathroom and put him in the tub. He turned the shower on cold because nothing humiliates like cold. He moved through the rooms. Bedroom, drawers open with the careless care of men in a hurry. Kitchen, a mug half-rinsed. Ren's drawing on the fridge, a bird with a small crown because Ren believed birds deserved to feel royal once a week. He felt anger try to crowd his decisions and did not let it. Anger makes you loud in your head. Loud heads make mistakes. The second man came from the doorway of Ren's room. Calder saw his shadow first. A boot print on Ren's rug made his fingers go colder than the shower in the other room. The second man was taller and had the muscle tone of a gym membership rather than a job. He had a knife because knives don't make noise. Calder threw a kitchen chair at his shins and followed it with his shoulder. People who train with knives know to turn. Gym men don't. The knife skittered. Calder put the man's wrist on the corner of the dresser and applied pressure until the wrist decided it didn't want to be a wrist anymore. "Who else?" Calder said into the man's ear while the world rang behind the man's eyes. No answer. He increased pressure until honesty arrived. "Basement," the man said. "We cut the power. We waited for you." "How many?" "2. Maybe 3. I was supposed." Calder put him to sleep because the world didn't need more of the man's voice in it. He reached into the closet and took the small case he kept behind boots that had carried him through versions of himself. He did not think about what it meant to open it. He simply opened it. The pistol inside was legal the way some marriages are legal: paperwork, a ceremony, a signature that people hope means more than it does. He checked the slide, the magazine, the chamber. He breathed out. He told the part of himself that wanted to panic to sit and watch and take notes. He moved to the basement door. He listened. The hum of the building's heart had been interrupted. The throb of a generator that wasn't as covered the lack like carpet covers a stain. He opened the door with the gun low and his left hand open. Stairs complained under his feet the way stairs do when they've seen too much furniture and too many disagreements. The basement smelled like dust and damp apology. He reached the bottom, took 2 steps, and the lights went out completely. He didn't need them. He had other ways of seeing. He took 1 more step and a voice he recognized from inside the van spoke from the darkness 2 feet to his left, too close for a man who didn't want to die. "Mr. Holt," the smiling man said, and now the smile was in the voice. "We were hoping you'd make it." Calder turned toward the sound and brought the pistol up, clean and sure, and then he stopped, because something cold pressed against the side of his neck, not metal. Fingers. Small ones. The weight of a hand that had not been there a second ago. "Daddy," a voice whispered from the black, not Ren's, but perfectly shaped to hit the part of him that made him defenseless. He froze, calibration blown apart. The smiling man's laughter slid through the dark like oil on an old machine. "You taught her well," the smiling voice said. "She's very quiet. Very brave. Come down the last step, Calder. Come down slow. Or she learns how fast light can turn off when a man like me says the word. Now. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story." The word hung between Calder and the dark like a trigger pulled halfway. He kept his weight on the ball of his right foot and let the left heel float, ready to pivot away from anything that felt like regret. The cold against his neck was not a barrel. It was fingers, small, trembling, and deliberate. The voice that followed had the exact wobble of Ren's when she'd had too much juice and not enough sleep. But the pitch was wrong by a fraction, the cadence too even. Not Ren. A recording or a mimic, placed where instinct would override the facts. "You taught her well," the smiling man said from somewhere 2 steps left and 1 step back. The voice came off concrete at an angle that made certainty a liar. "She's very quiet. Very brave. Come down the last step, Calder. Come down slow." Calder exhaled through his nose and let the air leave his chest like a decision, not a surrender. The cold fingers at his neck pressed harder. A breath. Damp. Not a child. A glove with ice on it. The smallest man in the world had just learned a father's map. He lowered his center and slid sideways into the rail with his shoulder. The hand at his neck snatched air. A body lunged where he had been. Calder let it go by and introduced the concrete post to its ribs. The sound it made, wet and surprised, told him enough. "Lights," the smiling man called, too confident. They didn't come. Calder had cut power to the basement stairs with his thumb on the kill switch by the door, muscle memory from 100 buildings with the same bad wiring. The only illumination was nostrils worth from the alley, a thin ribbon under the bulkhead door. He counted 1, 2, and moved. Low, then lower. He felt the brush of fabric, the motor twitch of a man about to grab, and went the other way. The pistol in his right hand stayed close. He didn't want sparks. He found the generator by sound, or rented hum, not the building's old belt drive wheeze. It stood on milk crates, the way temporary sins always do, with a gas can beside it and a length of extension cord that shone too new. He kicked the can. Gas fanned the air like a threat. He didn't need fire. He needed attention. "Don't," the smiling man said, and for the first time there was something like worry in his voice. Calder leaned into the dark. "I thought you liked calling the shots." "I like getting paid," the voice said back. "And my pay doesn't increase if you set this basement on fire with you in it." A shape moved, left shoulder low, right hand high. Calder stepped toward it and fed at his forearm. The arm took the bait, fingers closed. Calder rolled the wrist into a lock and pressed the joint toward its future until the owner agreed to drop the blade he hadn't wanted in this scene. The knife clinked against the generator casing. On the stairs, the mimic child whispered, "Daddy," again. This time, from the far wall. A speaker hidden in the ducting. The ice glove hand had been a decoy. The little shove at his neck had been to measure flinch, not to keep him in place. "Cheap trick," Calder said. His voice came back to him calmer than he felt. "What's the expensive one?" "You don't want to see the expensive one," the smiling man said. "Then show me the invoice," Calder answered, and he drove the heel of his boot into the milk crates. The generator tipped. The hum stuttered into a cough and died. The basement drank the extra dark and grew bolder with it. Someone behind the water heater swore. A hand reached for the cord to stand it back up. Calder flattened that hand with the edge of his pistol and heard a knuckle say something permanent. A shot cracked close, then a second. The muzzle flash was tiny, but the powder sting was not. The smiling man wasn't firing to hit. He was riding in light where he wanted Calder to look. Calder didn't look. He lifted his left foot, found the lip of the sump pit by memory, and stepped over. A body that did not have his map tried the same and dropped into the hole with a curse and the kind of splash that ruins bravado. Calder let him drown in the stink a while longer. "Stop," the smiling man said again, colder now. "We came for a conversation." "Your method needs a new PR firm," Calder said, and let himself smile once because sometimes fear is a balloon that pops when you show it your teeth. A phone on someone's hip buzzed. Reflex makes thumbs look, Calder shot the buzzing. The phone died with the look on it. He used the wow of that moment, men surprised by small losses, to move. He struck the metal post hard enough to ring it. The basement sang, stupid and honest. As the reverberation rolled, he used the noise like a curtain and crossed 10 feet sideways. The smiling man fired at where Calder had been and hit the post. Concrete dust peppered Calder's cheek. He ignored the sting. He stepped into the space inside the smiling man's reach and gave him the gift of gravity. Shoulder to hips, hips to knee, knee to ankle, the way you teach a door to open when it has never opened for you. They hit the floor. Calder took the gun with a twist that turned the smiling man's wrist into something he would regret in November. The gun skittered away and landed near the sump. The man inside reached for it with fingers that had learned humility. Calder stood on those fingers and took the extra polite apology the man offered as bones changed their minds. "Names," Calder said into the dark, and his voice was a thing with corners. Silence tried to be brave. It lasted as long as pride ever does. "Lorik," the smiling voice said at last, simultaneously charming and sour. My name is Lorik. Employer. A man who doesn't carry business cards. Calder pressed his boot down another degree. The sump man groaned. A second body from the hot water heater shifted, a leader's instinct to rescue checked by a leader's fear of dying. Rook, Lorik said, anger in it now because the wrong people had made him say the right thing. Graham Rook. Security boss who thinks he is a chess piece. He is not the king. He is not even a rook. He is a pawn who believes in diagonals. And above him? You know, Lorik said. But if I say it, I don't get paid in court later. I like to pay my lawyer in advance. Felix Dane? Calder offered. Board chair. Teeth like parentheses. Parentheses won't hold him, Lorik said. You'll need a longer throat. And if you come after me for this conversation, remember you saved my fingers when you could have erased them from my hand. I will pay that sort of debt. Calder did not say you don't owe me anything because he had learned that men like Lorik keep a better ledger than saints. Phones, he said instead. They slid toward him, 2, then 3, then one more. Lorik kept his, because of course he kept his. Calder let him. Larkin, he said into the dark, and the small, rugged radio in his pocket heard him because he had left it on a setting meant for rooms where cell signals fail and hearts don't. Say the word. Larkin's voice came back thin as a thread and twice as strong. I need a warrant on Rook's financials. Now. He's bought by Lodestar with Felix Dane running the purse. Judges don't say yes to now unless you give them candy, Larkin answered. What's the wrapper? Basement of my building, Calder said. For unlicensed firearms, 1 generator idling on milk crates, 3 men who have introduced themselves to my floor and weighs the lease for bids. And I have a package of images from Wilson Arts. Copy, Larkin said, and in the background Calder heard typing, a printer wake, the small choir of clerks who like to be the good guys when the good guys show up with a reason. Calder collected the phones and dumped them into a metal mixing bowl on the shelf because microwaves are democratic. He put the bowl in the oven and set it to pretentious bake. He didn't turn it on, he didn't need to. Faraday was a friend who worked for free. Then he zip-tied the men with a smoothness that once had a patch to go with it and opened the alley door. The air felt like it had been outside the whole time waiting to be useful. Larkin, he said, doors up. I'll send my friends with polite faces, Larkin replied. Stay put. I have to move, Calder said. Of course you do, Larkin sighed. Because you don't know how to sit still when it counts. I know how to move when it matters, Calder corrected, and closed the call before Friendship tried to change his mind. He took one last look at Ren's room. The boot print on her rug looked ridiculous now, smaller than a shoe, a child wearing a man. He wiped it with his sleeve because there are some stains that don't belong in the story of a child's mourning. He locked the door behind him and was on the street again, the night not yet dark enough to confess what it had seen. Bram kept his left hand on the wheel of the battered pickup and his right hand near the old CB radio that didn't work but made men in black cars think it did. Elara sat in the back beside Ren because she did not like the optics of the opposite. She counted to 7 with the child in a whisper and then again, and each time the number calmed her a little less. Her phone was off. Her life above ground was off. Money, the one thing that had always moved when she asked it to, the obedient river, was now a frozen stream under black ice. You okay? Bram asked without looking back. No, Elara said, and surprised herself with the relief of truth. But I'm functioning. That's the best human can do, Bram said. Better than okay if you ask me. Ren leaned her head against Elara's sleeve and breathed in the smell of flour and machinery that clung to Bram's jacket. Does pie count as dinner? She asked. In emergencies, Elara said. Pie is why people invent dinner. Ren considered. Don't tell my dad that you said that. He'll make you sign a paper. Elara smiled into the dark window and wondered who she would be at the end of this day. A person who trusted a stranger with her life? A person who owed debts she could never quantify? A person finally uninterested in being the strongest voice in the room because someone else's quiet had saved her? They reached the garage at Pier 3 by the slow route Calder had dictated. Bram let the truck roll the last 20 feet with the engine off. He moved like a big thing that knew how to make itself small. "Stay close," he said. "We go in 2 by 2. If I say drop, you drop." "I don't have practice dropping," Elara said. "You'll learn," Bram said, which sounded cruel until she realized he meant it as encouragement. They crossed the tar barrels, unlocked the side door with the key Bram found under the second step, and went inside. The garage smelled like salt, old tires, and the disappointment of men who had wanted to be sailors and became dock workers instead. "Top floor," Bram said. "A corner office for an honest mechanic." They climbed. Ren's hand was small in Elara's, bones like bird struts, light and surprisingly strong. On the top level, Bram opened a metal door with a rust sneeze and flicked on a lamp that did not complain about being woken. The room had a desk, a couch, a small kitchenette with a kettle and the kind of mugs you get for free when a supply company wants your loyalty. "You'll be safe enough," Bram said. "Larkin's people like this place. They'll swing by." Elara looked out the window at the harbor lights. She knew the line items that paid for those bulbs, the invoices, the public-private agreements, the way money made cities feel safer in ways that didn't match the reality at street level. She knew how to model a risk curve. She did not know how to hold a child's fear in her hands and turn it into something less sharp. "Can I text my sister?" she asked. "Just a period. She'll know it's me." Bram hesitated. "Calder wouldn't like it." "Calder isn't here," Elara said. Then, softer, "Please." Bram nodded once. 15 seconds. Then phone goes off and battery out. "I'll hold the foil." Elara typed a single dot and sent it. On the other end of the city, her sister, who had known when Elara was 9 that their father's promises had a hollow sender, would read it and not sleep and not call because she understood rules without being told. "Thank you," Elara said. "Don't make me regret it," Bram replied, but his face softened when Ren yawned so aggressively it looked like a roar. Ren didn't argue about bedtime. She crawled under the desk where a blanket lived for workers too late for home, tucked herself in with the efficiency of someone who had tested the escape tunnels of every room she had ever slept in, and closed her eyes. Elara slid down the wall until she was a mirror beside the desk and listened to Ren's counting fade. Bram sat at the door like a boulder that had decided to become a guard dog. He turned the CB to nonsense and pretended it was news. Calder drove back toward the pier and called Larkin with his knuckle on the wheel. "We have Rook," he said. "Or we have Rook's name." "We have Rook in his texts," Larkin said, satisfaction in his tone like a man who had found the lid to a box he was afraid would never close. "Your camera package caught enough. We picked up 2 in your basement and 1 with a grin at Wilson Arts." He lawyered up fast and sloppy. "Rook blew me a kiss from his SUV and then remembered his job title while I read him the warrant. He turned the phone over like a man handing you a used napkin and kept his face like restaurant staff who wants you gone. But the data's there. Felix? Slippery. His money never touches anything wet. But Merritt Shaw's emails do. CFO forgot that draft's draft in the cloud. He's on at least 3 threads where Lodestar's people speak like the end of a heist film. We have movement at a judge's house. We have hope." "Keep your hope quiet," Calder said. "Hope is a loud thing that attracts birds and bullets." "You going to Pier 3? Larkin asked. "Yes." "Good. I put a car 2 blocks out. They'll pretend they're bad at hiding. They're good at their actual job." Calder exhaled. The sound was more tired than he had expected. "Larkin." "Yeah. Thank you." "Don't get sentimental on me," Larkin said, and hung up like he'd done something noble. Calder parked 2 streets from the pier and walked the rest, because you can hear things with your feet that your car will never tell you. The night had toughened since he was last outside. The river pulled at the pilings with long, patient hands. He climbed the stairwell slow. At the top, he paused and listened, 2 breaths in the room beyond, different rhythms, both human. A softer breath under the desk. Good. He knocked twice, once soft like an echo. Bram opened. Elara stood behind him, her face in that middle space between relief and fury, relief that he was alive, fury that he had made her wait to find out. Basement, she asked. Ended in zip ties and a warrant, Calder said. You okay? No, she said again, because truth worked once and then again. But I'm functioning. He nodded, grateful for useful people. We're not done. Obviously, she said, and glanced at Ren's sleeping form under the desk. She didn't wake. She's learned how not to, Calder said, not liking the truth of it and not knowing how to change it in a world that doesn't. He turned to Bram. Thank you. Still want payment and pie, Bram said. But I'll accept gratitude as a down payment. Calder told them the short version, Rook, Felix, Lodestar, Lorik's grin going pale in the dark. Elara listened without interrupting, her brain doing numbers on another plane. When he finished, she let out a breath she had been holding since the garage. We need daylight, she said. Not the sun. Attention. They took their shots in shadow. We dragged them into rooms with microphones. They can buy men like Lorik. They cannot buy 1,000 small eyes. You want to go public, Calder said. I want to go surgical, she corrected. Public is a scalpel if you don't mind bleeding in front of people. You'll get shredded, Bram warned. They'll say you staged it. You know how people talk when a woman survives something men didn't plan for. Elara's mouth tilted. Not a smile. A baring of teeth she'd learned in boardrooms. I know how they talk when a woman dares to have a spine. Let them. Calder watched her and felt something unlock, respect thick and unpolished. We do it on your terms. But we do it after we move you, change your pattern, and make Rook chase you to the wrong building. And then, she asked. And then you pay me, he said. With what? With something I can't buy, he said. I'll tell you when we've made it to lunch tomorrow. She narrowed her eyes. That's a remarkably non-transactional ask for a man who itemizes quarters in a car wash. I itemize because life has a way of adding up, he said. And because quarters save lives when a door eats your fob. Bram cleared his throat. If you two are done flirting with philosophies, I'd like to know if I need to move a child. We move her once, Calder said. Then we stop moving her. Where? Bram asked. A house with a gate that doesn't apologize but still opens for you, Elara said. I own one. It has a safe room with boring chairs and filtered air in case the world wants to be on fire. I don't go there because it's too far from the office and too close to my life. But tonight it will do. You trust your staff? Calder asked. I trust the ones who make less than 60 grand a year, she said. People with tidy salaries dream about expensive crimes. People with ordinary ones dream about dinner. Then we talk to ordinary, Calder said. First we leave a gift for Rook. What kind of gift? Bram asked. The kind that makes a man show you who writes his checks, Calder said, and he took out one of the basement phones and popped the back. He slid out the SIM with a thumbnail that had been more useful than a knife these last 2 years and put it into a cheap handset Bram kept for customers who forgot to pay. He typed a text to Graham Rook from a kidnapper who thought nothing of spelling, boss man. Basement bad. We cut out. Need $$ for lawyer. You said Felix handle. Where, ***. Then he waited, counting the seconds where panic outruns training. The reply came sooner than professional. Not over text. Meet in 30. Address follows, ***. Amateur hour, Bram snorted. Or arrogance, Elara said. He thinks the story is still his. The address pinged through, a private garage under a glass building with a lobby that smelled like money and a humidifier, Dane headquarters. Of course, Elara said. He's calling the meeting in Felix's name to make it feel like protection. Or Felix told him to, Calder said. Either way, we need that meeting on camera and on paper. Larkin answered on the first ring. Tell me you have something stupid for me to stop. Calder told him the address. Larkin sighed like a man who sees the end of his week fire itself. I can get a judge to let me put ears on the room, but not eyes. Privacy laws have feelings. I can get uniforms in the garage. I can get a fire code inspector to dream up a sprinkler check if I have to. You, however, are going to try to attend this party and I have to pretend to stop you. Pretend hard, Calder said. I always do, Larkin said. Move the girl. Keep the CEO alive. Don't die. Working list, Calder replied. They took 2 cars, Bram in the pickup with Ren under a blanket and a toolbox that had a radio and the last cherry pie slice, Calder driving Alara in the sedan with plates that would fool the board. They split at the second light the way fish scatter when a net descends, not panic, geometry. Alara's house, if house was the word for a clean-lined angle of glass and stone tucked behind trees that had never seen hardship, accepted the code she typed with a finger that didn't tremble. The gate opened like a patient mouth. Calder let the car roll up the long drive with his eyes moving more than the wheels. Inside, the safe room was exactly what she'd promised, air that felt like it had been filtered 3 times through a conscience, chairs that were ugly on purpose, a closet with water, food packets, batteries, and a stack of puzzles as if fear could be distracted. Ren woke long enough to see a couch and a blanket and decide that this was an acceptable place for a dream to keep going. Calder checked the house, the fence, the cameras that talked to a server that had never crashed because Alara had paid a man who took downtime as a personal insult. He asked Alara for a code to change the system's remote access keys. Done, she said. Graham's credentials are dirt. Merritt's are mud. Felix has never had them. He pays people to carry keys. Then tonight he'll ask Rook to carry him, Calder said. Let's not let him. They left Ren with Bram and the woman from upstairs at the bakery, who had joined them with a bag of rolls and an expression best described as feral ant, and drove to Dane headquarters. The building did not hide its self-regard. It shed light on the sidewalk like wealth falling out of a pocket you couldn't sew shut. Security guards in suits pretended to be concierge. Calder and Alara slipped past polite smiles calibrated to stop poor people without stopping donors. Rook's text had included a code for the elevator. Calder made Alara press the buttons so that the camera would own that part of the record, not him. He stood slightly behind and to the left because he had learned where bullets prefer to go when doors open. The elevator delivered them to a private lobby with art that wanted to be expensive, not beautiful. A receptionist who wasn't a receptionist sat at a white desk and played with a ring that looked like it had thoughts about her finger. Mr. Rook is expecting you, she said. Her smile wanted enemies. Of course he is, Alara said, and walked as if she had every right to be wherever she was because that was true, no matter what men like Felix believed. The door opened to a conference room with windows listing every other building that thought too highly of itself. Rook stood at the far end in a suit that had been tailored to hide fear and met only half its goal. Felix Dane sat in a chair like a man pretending to be a throne. His hair had learned discipline from the markets. Ms. Quinn, Felix said, spreading his hands. We were just arranging my abduction, Alara said. Or arranging my rescue in a narrative you get to place on your investor call? Felix laughed as if an intern had told a joke. That's unkind. We're here to discuss the unfortunate incident at your garage. The one your man engineered, she said, and nodded at Rook. I spoke with the police. They have the text you sent me. They traced the number you used to a phone in your daughter's name. The subpoena will be on your desk in an hour. A pity about the draft emails, Merritt. You always were sloppier at hiding your intentions than your spreadsheets suggested. Merritt Shaw, the CFO, was suddenly visible in the window's reflection. He'd been standing to the side, hoping to live in the shadows of bigger sins. His mouth opened and closed. Air went in and out. Words did not. Felix leaned back, expression flat. Careful, he said. Accusation breeds liability. So does conspiracy, Alara said. She placed a folder on the table with a deliberateness that made Rook's hands twitch. Inside you'll find a detailed timeline of your attempts to acquire control of our authentication engine through Lodestar proxies, including term sheets, unlogged meetings, and plenty of your selfies in private dining rooms you never pay for. Felix Dane didn't reach for the folder. Men like him don't pick up the knife someone else offers, they wait to be cut so they can say it was an assault. Calder looked for vents, for doors that opened to back halls, for cameras that were pretend and real. He felt the air shift before he heard the footsteps. 2 men in the doorway behind them, stance too military, eyes too empty. "Stop," Rook said, lifting a hand. "We're not doing that." "Graham," Felix said, annoyance like lint on cashmere. "We are doing that." "No," Rook snapped, and the anger in it surprised Calder. "We're not, this room has ears." It did. Larkin's ears. Calder had seen the van outside, parked in a loading bay with a maintenance magnet that fooled everyone except the men who put the magnet on there. The judge's order sat in a folder in that van, crisp as fear. Delara reached for the folder. Felix reached to stop her. Calder stepped between without touching. He didn't lift a hand. He didn't need to. The simple insertion of a body where a hand wanted to go was enough to change minds. "Felix," Calder said quietly, "your sweet camera in the southwest corner is pointed 3 degrees low. Poor maintenance. Half your angles are wrong. Go ahead and be stupid. We'll all get to watch." Felix smiled in a way that said nothing on his face was connected to the part of him that thinks. "You're the father," he said. "The volunteer hero. Do you believe she will still employ you after tonight? Men like you end up with dental insurance and a thank you card. Men like me end up with a daughter who sleeps," Calder said. "I don't need your card." Felix made a decision, a small one that thought it was big. He flicked his fingers at the 2 men in the doorway the way a man dismisses crumbs from a tablecloth. They moved. Calder went left and forward at the same time. He took the first man's wrist and elbow high into a line that all bodies recognize. The second man raised a pistol that he thought he had time to use because rooms like this had always paused for him before. Delara threw the folder at his face. Paper is not a weapon unless it surprises pride. It did. He flinched. Calder put his shoulder into the man's midsection and stapled him to the conference table. Rook shouted, "Stop! Stop!" and for the first time, Calder heard something like a human in him. Felix backed away, knocking a chair over with his shoe. The receptionist had her phone to her ear in the lobby. Larkin would already be walking. Sirens didn't sing, not yet. What sang was the building's fire alarm as it discovered a smoke canister someone had rolled down a stairwell as part of Larkin's polite intervention. Sprinklers argued with art. Water made men like Felix look small and ordinary. Threads of suits darkened like embarrassments. Calder disarmed the first man and slid the pistol across the floor into a corner that belonged to cameras. Rook put his hands up, palms empty. Merritt tried to leave and found a uniform in the hallway with a face that didn't want overtime but would take it. Felix Dane stayed very still. Not out of wisdom. Out of calculation. You can see the math when it happens in eyes like his. Delara stood straight with water drumming on her hair and did not check her reflection or apologize for being wet in a room where power is always dry. "You tried to steal a company that serves millions," she said to Felix. "You tried to take me to get it done. You paid men who don't care if children break." Felix blinked once. "Prove it," he said. Larkin's voice from the door, "We plan to." He stepped in with 2 officers and a warrant that had changed the shape of many rooms and would again tonight. He read. He didn't dramatize. He let the legal words do what they were built to do. Felix's eyes found Calder over Larkin's shoulder. "You brought the dog," he said. "How noble." Calder almost laughed. "Dogs are loyal to children. You should try it." They took Rook first because he was the one who had touched the texts. Merritt second because cowards always look guiltier than villains. Felix walked under his own power, face composed, suit hanging wrong from water. He paused at the door and looked back at Alara as if searching for the clause that would save him. There was none. When the room emptied, the alarms silenced like a conductor had put his hand down. Alara sank into a chair and let her shoulders tell the story her face wouldn't. Calder stood near the window, water dripping off his nose. He felt the adrenaline start to fail like a bad friend. "You should get dry," Alara said. "I have a towel in my office, but it's the size of a napkin." "I've been worse," he said, and then something that had wanted to speak all day finally did. "Thank you for not letting me go to my house alone." "You didn't," she said, and the answer landed for both of them in a place neither had language for yet. Morning started where it always does, at the feet of people who didn't sleep. Ren woke in the safe room to the smell of pancakes. Bram cannot cook, but he can pour batter in circles that look like their plan worked. Alara stood in her kitchen in borrowed jeans and a t-shirt that had been meant for running and had run out of patience. She watched Ren eat and felt something in her own chest unclench, like a knot loosening at last. Calder came in with a paper bag that said coffee the way few bags manage to. He set it down and did the dad calculus: plate, napkin, syrup, smile. He made the smile last, even though his eyes had hours in them. "Larkin called," he said. "Rook flipped at 3 in the morning. He said he never intended harm. He said he was saving the company from a reckless CEO. He said a lot of things men say before they remember they're not the hero." "And Felix?" Alara asked. "Lawyers," Calder said. "It'll be a while. But not forever." She nodded like a queen doesn't when the camera is on and like a sister does when the car is packed for leaving. "I have a board meeting at 10. You will come." "I don't do board meetings," he said. "I do doors in bad basements." "You'll do this one," she said. "And then I will pay you." He met her eyes. He had promised to ask when they reached lunch. It was breakfast, but the day had learned to bend. "Okay," he said. "I'm asking." "For what?" Alara asked, voice careful. "A house with a small yard," he said, the words scraped up from a part of him he didn't open in rooms with other people. "Not today. Not a gift. A loan that becomes not a loan if I do things I already intend to do. A safe place where Ren can plant something and watch it live. Somewhere I can tell her we are not leaving unless the roof learns to leak." Alara did not speak immediately. She did not look offended. She did not perform the generosity of a woman who has too much money. She thought. She weighed the ask the way she weighed acquisitions. "Yes," she said at last. "With terms you will hate because they protect you from me, and terms I will hate because they protect me from my instincts. We will sign it at noon." Bram grunted. "That's generous and smart. Hate those together." Calder exhaled. He had expected to feel smaller asking. He did not. He felt like a father completing a mission brief. Ren licked syrup off her finger and said, "Can the house have a tree?" "Yes," Alara said, eyes suddenly swimming. "A ridiculous one. With a swing." The board meeting did not know how to hold them when they entered. Suits shifted like weather. Eyes tracked Alara as if she had brought ruin into a quiet room when what she had brought was the truth. She sat. Calder stood behind and to the side like bad furniture, useful, unfashionable, heavy. Bram did not enter because Bram believes in rooms he can leave fast. Felix's seat looked wrong being empty. Merritt's looked like a confession. The independent directors cleared their throats as if the sound could turn them into the kind of people they had pretended to be on LinkedIn. Alara spoke without theater. She put the timeline on the table. She used short sentences that did not indulge anyone's love of jargon. She named the names that had put her life in a van and tried to make the company into a toy. "The vote you wanted," she said, "to re-examine leadership direction, we'll take it now. But I will not be voting against myself." "You can. Do it in the light." They asked questions because questions make brilliant men feel less small. She answered with numbers because numbers make men feel like they are winning even when they are not. When the vote came, their courage was smaller than their suits. They chose to keep the woman who had not died and to fire the men who had not been brave. Merritt resigned like a man falling on a sword he had borrowed. Felix stepped aside pending the outcome of legal proceedings, which is how power translates embarrassment. After, Alara pulled Calder into her office and closed the door on the congratulations people practiced when survival makes them feel virtuous. She opened a drawer, took out a folder, and handed him a document that had his name spelled correctly in Wren's in a line he had never thought to see. "It's a trust," she said. "For Wren. Not a college fund, unless she wants it to be. It triggers if you are gone, legally or practically, and cannot be touched by anyone but the woman who makes pancakes without permission." Calder's throat did something he did not allow in offices. He held it steady with the memory of a drill sergeant who had once said, "Feelings are weather. Dress for them." "And this," Alara said, and handed him a key fob. "Not to a car. To a house with a tree. It's in both of your names. It is not mine. The paperwork says you pay me back as a percentage of your life. Not your salary. Your life. If you can't, the house stays yours anyway because I refuse to hold that kind of debt over Wren." He shook his head because the room had got a size wrong. "Alara. This is what generous looks like when it's not trying to be pretty," she said. "You saved my life. I don't get to mathematical that away." He closed his hand around the fob. He did not say thank you because the words did not fit. He said, "Come to dinner." Spaghetti. It chooses chaos some nights. She smiled, real, a thing with asymmetry. "I will. And I'll bring bread. And if the sauce chooses chaos, we'll call it jazz." They drove to see the house at dusk. Wren carried a kite because the sky had a wind and because a child insists on the right props for a scene like this. Calder carried the weight of a day that had made him a different shape and found it manageable when a small hand held his. The house sat on a little hill with a walnut tree like a grandmother who told the weather the truth. The grass was an apology for every parking lot Wren had known as a playground. The porch had a promise in it, a place where October would knock and be allowed in. Wren ran. She ran the way a child runs when no car can see her, when no man can reach her, when the world is a field and not a maze. She let the kite up. The kite took the air like it had been waiting for exactly this minute. Alara stood at the edge of the yard and watched and did the math a different way, not numbers that lead to profit, but choices that lead to a life. She had pathways in her head that didn't crumple like they used to when she looked up from her desk and saw nothing but glass. Calder stood beside her and did not speak. The silence was companionable. It was also an oath. "Your debt is paid," she said at last. "I didn't ask for debt," he said. "I know," she replied. "Which is why I wanted to call it a gift and you wanted to call it a contract. We compromised. That's how people grow." Wren yelled, "Look," and the kite dove insisted on being looked at, and then rose again because it had the right help. They went inside. The house smelled like dust and paint and a future. Calder opened a window. Air came in that hadn't been inside anyone else first. On the mantel, someone had left a card. The realtor. The baker. Bram. Alara opened it. The card was blank except for 7 small dots in a row. Wren counted them and smiled. 7, she said. The number we use to slow storms. Exactly, Calder said. They ate on the floor that night, pizza, because Bram believes in traditions that don't require forks. Alara laughed at the grease, at a joke Wren made about the kite, at the sound of a house learning their names. Later, when the child slept in her new room with the window cracked to listen for crickets, when the dishes were stacked, Alara stood by the walnut tree and looked up through the leaves. "You know," she said softly, "when I was a kid, I thought safety was a product. Now I think it's a verb. You do it for people." Calder looked at her and saw a woman who had turned a boardroom into a courtroom and a house into a promise. "And sometimes they do it for you," he said. Larkin texted a photo at 11, Felix Dane in a different suit, a different room, the same eyes. "He'll dance for a while. Then he'll sit, ***. Calder put the phone away. He breathed. He felt the first day after danger arrived the way rain arrives after a hot spell, hesitant, then certain. Elara looked over. "Tomorrow," she said. "I still have a company to run. And I have a swing to install," Calder said. "We can both be useful." She nodded. "Dinner next week," she said. "Jazz sauce." "Jazz sauce," he agreed. They stood like that, near, not touching, two people who had saved each other in different currencies, under a tree that had decided to include them in its shade. Wren turned in her sleep and said a word that sounded like bird and meant home. And the city, which had tried to break them, went on being a place where people get lost and then found by strangers who refuse to stay strangers. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.